Welcome to Under the Floorboards, where we dive deep into the darkest corner of true crime. I'm Gene, and today we're heading to the frozen wilderness of Alaska to uncover the horrifying story of a man who seemed like an ordinary small-town baker. But underneath all that friendly facade lurked a sadistic killer. Robert Hansen wasn't just a murderer, he was a hunter. His victims? Young women, often vulnerable and alone, whom he lured into his trap before unleashing them into the Alaskan wilderness to be hunted like prey. For over a decade, Hansen stalked the streets of Anchorage, selecting victims, manipulating the system, and evading capture. It took one woman's terrifying escape to finally bring him down. This is the story of Robert Hansen, the butcher baker of Alaska. Before I get into this, you guys should know that I am actually from Alaska myself, a place called North Pole. You can look it up. It is real. I've had people tell me that they thought it wasn't real, but it is. It's where I grew up. But going into this, I don't know what to expect. I've never, I wrote the script, obviously, but until before I researched him, I didn't know what to expect because, Also, thank you to Drea for recommending me this topic. But now we will get back into the actual story. To understand what turned Robert Hansen into a killer, we have to go back to where it all started. Hansen was born in 1939 in Esterville, Iowa. He was the son of a Danish immigrant, but strict and demanding father who expected Robert to follow in his footsteps as a baker. But Robert's childhood was anything but sweet. He was painfully shy, suffered from severe acne that left his face scarred, and had a debilitating stutter that made him a target for relentless bullying. He was rejected by girls, humiliated by his peers, and spent much of his youth harboring deep resentment. But instead of finding healthy ways to cope, he turned to fantasies of revenge, and those fantasies would soon manifest into real violence. At 18, Hansen set fire to a school bus garage in Iowa. He was caught and sentenced to 3 years in prison but was released early. It was the first sign that he was dangerous and that the justice system would fail to stop him. In 1967, he moved to Anchorage, Alaska, where he opened a bakery and built a life that, on the surface, seemed respectable. He had a wife, children, and a business. But behind closed doors, his old anger hadn't faded. It had evolved. By the early 1970s, Anchorage was booming. With the construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, the city saw an influx of workers, and with them came a rise in the sex industry. Strip clubs, massage parlors, and street prostitution. It was the perfect hunting ground for Robert Hansen. Okay, now I'm going to get into the more violent nature of what he did. He had a method. He would cruise the streets looking for young women, many of them dancers or sex workers. He would approach them, offer them money, and lure them into his car. Some he would assault and then let go, but others, they were never seen again. Which is crazy because, that's just crazy. To go disappearing off the face of the earth is insane. Hansen had an advantage. He was an experienced hunter. He owned a small plane, a Piper's Super Club, which he used to fly his victims deep into the Alaskan wilderness. There he would release them into the wilderness and hunt them like animals. Imagine that for a second. You've been kidnapped, taken miles away from civilization, and then let loose in the freezing forest. You run, but you hear footsteps behind you. You hear the click of a rifle, and then silence. Hansen would stalk his victims, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. He used a .223 caliber Ruger Mini 14 rifle. When he was done, he would bury their bodies in remote areas, marking their locations on a map. And for years, no one suspected him. So, my personal thoughts on this. There's a story that I read in school. I'm not sure what it's called. I might look it up right now. Um, Give me one moment. The Most Dangerous Game, that's what it's called. But it's published as The Hounds of Zareth. I read that in school and I thought that it was a crazy book. Uh, that book is kind of the same, except it takes place on a small island. I don't know if it specifies where. Um, but yeah, I kind of just thought that it would be smart to make that little point right there. Hansen, he was a respected business owner, a family man, and even when women started disappearing, even when the police questioned him, he had an alibi, a reputation, and that reputation kept him safe until 1983. In June of 1983, Robert Hansen made a mistake. A 17-year-old girl named Cindy Paulson had been working as a sex worker in Anchorage when Hansen picked her up. He pulled a gun on her, took her to his home, and assaulted her. But Cindy was different. She fought back. When Hansen left her alone momentarily, she seized the opportunity. She ran, barefoot, half-dressed, and still handcuffed. She flagged down a passing truck. That truck driver took her straight to the police. At first, authorities were skeptical. Hansen was well liked in the community, but Cindy's details were chillingly specific. She had described his basement, his house, his car, and investigators dug deeper and found inconsistencies in Hansen's alibis, which is crazy until they found the map. The map that had the bodies' locations marked on it, which, in my opinion, not a very smart thing to do. But hey, I guess everyone has their weaknesses. A detailed aviation map in his home marked with X's, locations in the Alaskan wilderness where he had buried his victims. The map led authorities to multiple bodies, confirming what they had feared. Robert Hansen was a serial killer. In 1984, Robert Hansen was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, and assault. Faced with overwhelming evidence, he confessed, admitting to at least 17 murders, though authorities believe that the real number could be much higher. He was sentenced to 461 years in prison, ensuring that he would never walk free again. Hansen spent the rest of his life behind bars until his death in 2014. His case remains one of the most chilling in American crime history, not just because of the brutal nature of his killings, but because he was able to hide in plain sight for so long. A husband, a father, a respected businessman, but more importantly, a monster. So this episode is a little bit different because usually I do killers that aren't super well known, but I feel like Robert Hansen is a little more well known than uh, just than in general. But since I had it suggested to me, I felt like I probably should do it just because to respect the followings of you amazing people who have been following since I started. Um, what I'm hoping to do is post an episode every Friday, like I have been doing. Uh, just so I can, do that. Hopefully, minus the Fridays I've missed, around, I don't know, like 45 episodes should be released this year. If I can get to that, there's a lot of serial killers, so I'm hoping that I can get to that eventually. And hopefully by then I'll have some more followers and subscribers and all that stuff. Just a reminder, I do have Instagram, Spotify, and I do have a YouTube channel. If you want to go check that out, Under the Floorboards is the podcast name, but my Instagram is just Wyatt Bridges, because it's kind of my personal Instagram. I may in the future make an Instagram for the podcast, but I'm hoping to get at least, let's say, 100 subscribers on YouTube, and then I'll probably make a personal account for it. Maybe 50 subscribers, because 100 is kind of a lot. But yeah, go check it out. If you're, obviously on Spotify or YouTube, and you already know, but just in case you're only listening to this on one, I do have a YouTube and Spotify. So there you go. The story of Robert Hansen is a very terrifying reminder that sometimes the most dangerous the most dangerous people are the ones who blend in the best. Which, just saying, be wary, but usually it's fine. But just be wary of your surroundings and the people you're around. He was a skilled manipulator, a man who used his community's trust as a shield while committing unspeakable crimes. So something that we can learn from something like this, try to spot two red flags before it's too late. And yeah, just try to be able to spot these things before it's too late. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment, send me a message, or follow me, like I said, on Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps me to be able to tell these important stories. Thanks for tuning in, but until next time, stay curious and stay boarded.